all the ruffles have been sewn onto the skirt, and it's pretty clear in the directions, but there will be 3 ruffles. The first ruffle will be placed so it's just hanging below, maybe by like, I'd say that's probably like in a quarter of an inch or a little less below the hem. And then the next row is put on where it's just touching the top of that gather, the next row, the top of that gather. And remember how we put these, it's kind of hard to see them now because they're all covered up, but I use that technique where you mark, you quarter your skirt. So you've got it front and back and then your 2 sides. And then I did the same thing with the ruffles. It made it really, really easy. I mean, it's time consuming because you have to do a lot of these. There's 4 rows of these, but I used those points I gathered, pulled up to fit, pinned it in place, and then started another thread on the opposite side. I just didn't keep gathering. So I kind of like, I did, established this is, the gathering between these 2 points. Then I tied it off. Then I started a new gathering between these 2 points. Then I tied it off. And I use that for all of the ruffles at the bottom. I actually also, when I started the ruffle, let me see if I can actually find one. I think the bottom one I started on one of the side seams. Let's see, maybe it's over here. See, this fabric is so great because it just sort of all blends in together. You can't see anything. Okay, I have a seam here someplace, but I can't seem to find it. Yeah, that is odd. I think I started it here. Well, yeah, it's just this fabric is great at camouflaging. But what I basically was going to say is I started this, I left maybe about like a half an inch, and then I started a half an inch in from the cut edge. And then when I got to and I didn't sew it down, you're just pinning it down. When I got to when I met it, I placed both the right sides together and sewed them closed, ironed it, and then I continued gathering. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it was really easy. This is probably something you could do in front of the TV or just, relaxing. The 3 tiers of ruffles are put on exactly the same way. Now the top tier is really interesting the way they've designed this. It's I think it's about 5 inches away. 5 inches away from your opening. This is your front opening. You're going to mark with a pin, and that's where the bottom of your ruffle is going to start. And what's going to basically happen is that you're going to be curving this down. It doesn't go all the way around. It just stops at the waistline. You're going to be curving it around until the bottom meets the top of this gathered of the below row of ruffle. And then you're just going to keep doing that all the way across. And it's, you could also, pin something to mark off the distance if you want, but I just eyeballed this. And then when you get to the other area, here's your other 5-inch mark, and you're going to make a mark, and that's where you're going to stop. So it's sort of curving down, going all the way across. It's like a little, like a faux overskirt. So the next step we're going to be doing, and I've already done one side, is we're going to be running 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top of the skirt to pull it into our bodice, which is actually, that's as wide as the bodice is, and that's how much you actually have to pull it in. So I have a suggestion. Rather than doing it all in one piece, you could do whatever you want. I'm doing it in 2 different sections. I'm doing one section, I'm stopping at the center back, and I'm going to do another section, I'm going to stop at the center back. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is kind of a thick material. I'm also using a wider stitch because you've got to just pull all this up. If you're running a tiny little gathering stitch, number one, you might have some issues trying to pull it through the tarlatan because it's bulky. But this will help you just to, you're not pulling the thread, you're easing it along. This will help you just to try to get this much fabric into a smaller space because you're using a slightly larger stitch, and the gathers will be a little bit, well, I don't know if you'd say they were tighter, but they're just going to be a little bit more compact. So you want to just really carefully work this. And, I'm kind of like wondering if this is actually going to be enough, because that's our center back. It is actually, look. And like, I'm surprised because, the Carmel team is always so perfect with their instructions and their patterns. So that's actually the wrong way. So look at this. Look how beautiful and full this skirt has become. It's just, it can stand up on its own, which is kind of great. So I'm just going to show you, if let's say the entire side was gathered, and what you want to do is you want to pull this up as tightly as possible, and hopefully I can still do that. It's always crazy with all of this thread. Okay. So I just want to get that as tight as possible, really. And, you could thread this into a larger needle and really securely tie it off. Sometimes I just do a couple of knots. Look, everything else is getting caught up in it too. It does not want to behave. Okay. Is that right? Oh, I'm not sure. Okay, I think that's right. So, whoops. Okay, so if that happens, just bring it together and make a little tuck. Where are my pins? Okay. So you just want to stop that from unraveling. Oh, it makes me so angry when I do that. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to match the center back, which is approximately here. Right sides together. I'm not going to sew it now, but I'm just going to show you what the idea is. And we're just matching the raw edges. And we're making sure that our front opening of the bodice is aligned with the front opening of the skirt. And I'm probably just going to pin this for now because, again, I don't want to have to do this over again because my thread snapped. I'm using cotton thread, and I think, you guys will probably yell at me, but I think sometimes for gathering large areas of fabric and, just pulling it all in, and, you really just need to make sure that the thread is strong. Sometimes I will use a polyester thread. I know it's not a great thing. They wouldn't have used that back then, but I think they probably had a stronger thread that they would use to this type of cartridge pleating. So I'm going to, so you basically see from center, if we could see our center line, it should be, where's our center line? Where are you? Oh, there it is. See, from center line to center line. You see the probably could be pulled in a little tighter, but it's all aligning. And that's what's so great about these basting stitches too, because it really helps you with the ruffles. It'll help you with positioning. In all reality, the way this probably should be, and I don't know if it is that side basting, where is it? See, it's all blending in. I have to pull it out anyway. Oh, the side basting should really be aligning with the side seam. It looks like it's kind of close, but not exactly. So you're using that basting, side basting, to actually know how much to pull in terms of if I could speak English, in terms of the waist gather. So I'm going to I'm going to finish this other side, and hopefully I won't snap anything. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you once the bodice is attached to the skirt. And then we're going to move on to some finishing trim for the bodice and the attached skirt. Now it'll be a dress. And I'll show you how to do that. It's going to be a really charming black velvet trim and black lace. Just really, really pretty. So I will go away, I will get that going, and I will be back. The bodice and the skirt have been sewn together. And as I said, it's a lot of fabric to gather up. So it's a little bit unwieldy to work with, but just, take your time, make sure that when you're stitching, you see this little bit, I can see the gathering under there. I can actually probably rip that out, and that would be fine. I don't want to rip the silk, but maybe I'll do this off camera. I can rip that stitching out if I see it, but you just really want to make this as clean as possible. Let's just give this a little trim. There's going to be a band of black velvet that's going to go around the waist that will hide a multitude of sins, but you just want to try not to make the sins in the first place. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to trim the bodice and the sleeves with this thin black velvet. You're just going to start your cut edge, one of your cut edges, or cut ends rather, right at the end. It's a little slippery. Right at the end, or right where the waistline begins, or waist seam. And I'm probably not going to pin this. I'm probably going to start by, I can get it a little closer. Don't worry about the raw end, because as I said, we're going to have a little band of black velvet that's going to go around the waist, and that's going to hide that. So I'm probably, and I don't have do I have a threaded needle? No, of course I don't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to whip this edge, the outer edge, to the edge of the bodice. I'm going to continue going up, and then I'm going to try to get a tight miter at this corner point. And you're just basically, once you get to a certain point, you're just going to take a little fold and you're going to fold it in. And you're just going to try to make that as sharp a miter as possible. Now you're going to be doing the same thing on the sleeves. You're going to start from this inside point. Or you know what, let me just think for a second. Yeah, I think there's going to be a button that's going to be on this inside point. So you might as well just start at the inside point. You're going to go all the way around, and then you're going to die into that inside point. You're going to be applying it the same way that I'm applying this, where you're going to be whipping it to the edge. And then once it's all whipped to the edge, I'm going to come back and I'm going to sew this edge with little running stitches along the edge, so it's just really flat and down. So I'm going to go off and do that. I will get I'll get the velvet trim on, and then I'll come back and I will show you how, I don't like this little thread that's hanging here. And I'll show you how we apply the lace. And then the last step on the dress, look how huge this is. This is gigantic. The last step on the dress is going to be covered buttons. And then we can move on to the bonnet, which is a lot of fun. So I will see you in a little bit. I just wanted to show you how we've been applying. I think the last step is we had gone up and around the neckline. We're stopping here and we're bringing that to the inside, because this is going to be covered when we attach our closures, our hooks and eyes. And we also did our sleeves. So as you can see, we've started our velvet, we've wrapped it around, and we've whipped it to the outside edge, and then we've sewn it flat on the other side of the velvet just to keep it down. And then we've taken a piece of lace, and I think your directions will give you the measurement. It says to gather it, and I gathered the first piece, and I thought, I like it, but I think I want it to be a little bit, I guess, flatter or stand up a little bit more. So I just took some little tucks in here. And didn't do it with any machine or anything. I just did it by hand. sewed those tucks together, then I sewed it to the inside, and you just want to make sure that you're overlapping the velvet, or at least you're dropping the header of the lace a little bit below the neckline. And then we did the same thing for the sleeves, but it's a little bit different. I think this is a 11-inch piece of lace, if I can remember correctly. We've taken an 11-inch piece of lace, we've seamed it at one end, so we made a closed loop. And then what I like to do is we're going to be doing this from the inside out. I like to start, because this is the seam, I think I'm going to start the seam and align that seam with the underarm seam. I'm not going to do all of this. I'm just going to show you a little bit. And then sort of like the same technique that we used for the ruffles, we are going to find the center of the piece of lace. And let's say I mark that with a pin. And then we're going to align that with this center point. And then we're just going to gather up between those 2 points on each side. You could do it separately. And then you're going to sew it in place with a little running stitch just along the, little underneath the end of the sleeve and underneath the black velvet ribbon. And I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. And you want to do that from the inside out, because it really just makes it much easier. You're going to turn it inside out. And that's what it looks like when it's been applied. It's really pretty and feminine. Remember, we're going to be putting a covered button over here, so that'll cover your miter. So when you do that, don't be too worried about it. And then the last thing we do is we're going to run the black velvet around the waistline. So I lied in the last segment. I told you we're going to move on to the covered buttons. I'm going to show you the covered buttons, but first I omitted a step, actually 2 steps. You're going to be creating this back bow. It's cut on the bias, so it's going to make it pretty easy for you to work with, but it still frays a little bit. So I've pretty much done all of it, but I just want to show you which side did I leave open. I just want to show you what this looks like. So before you've applied the ribbon, you've turned over maybe about 1/8, a little bit over 1/8. What you're really trying to do is hide this turnover underneath the black velvet ribbon, which is 3/16. So I would say probably 1/8. You're going to turn that to the right side, the silk to the right side, and you're going to pin it, and then you're going to you could baste it, you could do a running stitch along it, and then you're going to press it. And then what you're going to do, starting at your center point, let's find our center. Starting at your center point, you're going to apply the same way you did with the neckline and with the sleeves. You're going to apply your black velvet trim flat. You're going to whip that over on this edge. And then once you've done all of that, you're going to sew it flat to the silk with a little running stitch. And it's okay that you see the stitches on the back. This isn't lined or anything. Once that's done, what we're going to do, and I still have to finish the edge that I showed you because I just wanted to leave that open as a demonstration. You're going to find, and then you probably want to give it a good press with steam from the back. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about damaging the silk or anything, or the velvet. You just want to make sure it's nice and flat, and I probably will go back and give it a little bit more of a press. You're going to take your thread, and it can be black thread because what we're going to be doing next is hiding this. And you're going to, maybe this makes it easier for us. I'll give it just a little bit of a tiny little press. So I have a stitching line. I'll take my pins out. And this is your center front. So what we're going to be doing, and don't worry about hiding your knot or your stitches. You're basically going to be running a gathering stitch through the center of this. And this is going to be creating the center back bow, which I had completely forgotten to tell you about in the last segment. So you're making this sort of very exuberant bow well, maybe it's more of a knot. You know, this doesn't really have loops, so I guess you wouldn't call it a bow. I would just call it a, you know, decorative knot, maybe. And you're just going to pull that up, and you're going to tie it off. Just make sure you don't want it to come out again. Okay, so remember, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to finish that one piece. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take, if I can find it, I think it's about a 3-inch square piece of silk. That's going to be the center knot. And you're going to turn it, you know, you might even want to just find the center because that always helps with things. You're going to turn it so it has a slight overlap at the center. You can cut this, it's going to be cut on the straight, but you can cut it using any part of the pattern that you want to. I like the green. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a tuck in one end. Okay, and that tuck is going to go on the back. And I may not finish this, but I want to just show you sort of the thought behind it. So basically, this is your front, right? This is the front of your bow. And you see the tuck is going in this direction. You're going to take another tuck and you're going to take it in the opposite direction. You're going to bring that to the back. You know, this is where this is like it's just a little bit of artistic license here. You're going to bring it to the back and you're going to arrange it however you want to arrange it. But I sort of like a little bit of poofiness. You're going to want to make sure that the back is really pretty, you know, and I might even like exaggerate a little bit more. Like I might even like, when I sew it together, I might take a little bit of a running stitch here just to hold it together or poof it out a little bit more. Like this is really where you can have a little bit of fun because this is the couture part of this. And then once you've done that, you're going to sew it down, slip stitch it down. You don't have to go through the front. You're just slip stitching it down in position. And then I would suggest that you do your velvet trim on this piece before you go and create these streamers, which is basically our next step. So I would say finish this, make sure that you have enough to cover it on, then divide your remaining velvet into 2 equal-sized pieces and tack them together at the center point. And I'm just talking about the center point of the streamers. Then once you've done that, you're going to tack them down securely to the center back at the waistline. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our bow over that. And you can sort of see how that comes together. You know, and with these bows, you can really have a lot of fun with them. I mean, like you can work on them so, you know, they're a little bit fuller. I sometimes just like them to lay a little bit flatter. But you see, that's like a really pretty effect here. And once you've got that set, you can always steam it in position. So you've got this bow and these beautiful streamers coming in the back, in the center back. So I said I would show you about the cover buttons because really our next step on this dress, and then we're pretty much done with the dress, is we're going to, and if you see a little stray thread, you're just going to cut it off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our covered buttons on. Now, you don't have to really fit this to your doll for the covered buttons, but what you want to do is you want to measure. You're going to measure where your top button is. Let's say there are going to be 4 buttons here. So I want one at the neckline, and I want one above the waistline. You know, these are purely decorative. They're not doing anything. And then what I want to do is I want to measure that. I'm so bad with math. Let me just see. That's 2.5 inches. Like 1 1/16. Let's see how that works. Or if you really want to make it easier, you can just basically find your center point. This, you know, you would do this for 3 buttons and then just basically eyeball where those should be. So I'm thinking it's maybe like here, here, and then you can always go back and you can measure them. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to move this one down a bit, but it's about an inch between, an inch between the buttons. And we're going to set that aside. And then we're going to make the covered buttons. And the covered buttons are really, really simple. I've been practicing a little bit. You're going to have a little piece of probably black silk in your kit. I'm using a nickel because nickel is approximately the same size. Well, rather, it's not the same size. It's approximately large enough. You might want to even go a little bit under this nickel, but it's approximately large enough to create a nice covered button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this with like a white pencil or a disappearing pen. And you're going to cut it out. And then you're going to run a line of gathering stitches. I don't know if you can see this, but you know, you can come in a good 1/8 of an inch, maybe even a little bit more, because you want this to be really taut on the shank of the button, or wrap around the button securely. You're going to run a gathering stitch around. You're going to place your button on the center. Once it's been cut out, once you've run your gathering stitches, you're going to hold it down and you're going to pull that gathering stitch up tightly, and then you're going to make sure that you tie it really tightly and tie it off, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get this little covered button. You're still going to have the shank there, so that's where you're going to be attaching this. Now, if you see some of like little drips and drabs of, or little fluffy pieces on the inside, you can touch it up with a little bit of clear nail polish, just to keep it from, of course, look at this. The nail polish fell off, and I haven't used it for a while, I guess. But I will touch that up with a little bit of nail polish. Unfortunately, I don't have another container here. But just to sort of seal it off, let it dry. No one's going to see that because it's going to go against your bodice. And then you're just going to, where you've marked these with your pins, you're just going to sew them down, and you're going to make sure that they're just the same distance from the edge. And then you're also going to sew one on top of the points of each of these sleeve openings. So you can see that's going to be a really pretty effect there. The very last thing you're going to do is you're going to fit this to your doll. And once you fit it to your doll, you're going to position your 3 hooks on this side, okay? And you're going to want to position those hooks so they're a little bit set in from the edge. You don't want to see those hooks. Let me just dump some hooks out here. So these aren't the markings for our hooks because there are 3 of them. So we're going to have one, you know, approximately at the top. So when I say to set them back, you're going to want to set them away from the edge of the opening, because that actually just will hide them a little bit, and that's how they did it in the 19th century. They weren't right up against the top. You're also going to, you know, if you've never sewn a hook in before, you're going to sew it around these loops at the bottom, and then you're going to sew across and capture this little loop here at the top so it doesn't pull up. It's going to keep it nice and stable and flat. And then with sort of like a matching thread, you're going to locate the locations for your thread loops, your thread bars rather, and you're going to sew corresponding thread bars. But make sure that you've put this on your doll and you fit it to her. It should be a pretty snug fit. The waist should be pretty tight. There is a lot of fabric here, so you're going to want to pull it in. And then you're basically going to be done with the dress, and we can move on to the bonnet. So I'll go back. I'll finish these steps. I'll come back. I'll show the dress on the doll, and I love this skirt. Look at this. It's just insanely full. It's gorgeous. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to do that and finish my bow and everything that I just showed you, and come back and show you the final. And I'm just going to mark this with a pin so I know where to start my stitching and where to end it, if I can remember. Yeah, there we go. So I just really left that little opening for you guys just to give you a little demonstration. Okay, so I'll be off and I'll do that, and I will be back and we will look at the finished dress and I will talk about the bonnet. Here she is in her dress, and you'll have in the introduction, you'll have a better view of it, because it's always so hard to capture something with this particular camera setup, but it's very, I think they did such a beautiful job with this design. I really love it. Just feels like it's so fashionable and feminine and beautiful. Yeah, it's really, the dress is really just a delight to sew, and when you sort of see the fullness of that skirt with her full slip underneath it, you're just going to love it. So I'm going to now start the hat, or rather the bonnet, because this has strings. It is a bonnet. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to decide what's going to be our back, the back of the bonnet. And I'm sort of had spent some time looking at this, and I like, you know, you could do it this way, you could do it this way. I'm kind of leaning towards this being the back. And the reason why we're doing that, where's the lace, is that we're going to, well, we have to press your lace first because you want it to be nice and smooth. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be sewing the lace to the inside of the bonnet, and you're going to be sewing it probably about 3/16 away from the edge. And then once it's all sewn in position, you're going to turn this edge over and you're going to sew this down, which makes a lot more sense because that's the prettier side that you're going to want to see when the bonnet is on. And so I'm going to do that. This is our center. Remember, this is our center back. And when I get to the center back, I'm going to overlap. I'm going to turn in and overlap this edge. So it's going to be completely, covered. And I'm going to go around and pin it in place. You don't need, you're not pulling this too tightly, but when you get to turn it on the inside, you're just going to sort of be tacking it down on the inside. And trying very hard not to let your stitches show through this layer. There's a couple of layers here, so you should be okay. So I'm going to start by doing that. I actually think I'll probably, I don't know, I don't necessarily need to use pins with this. I just need to know where the center back is, and that's my center back. I'm just going to start, and I'm going to be sewing it and looking at it, making sure that it's just equidistant as I go along. And then I will come back, and you might want to use sort of a longish needle for this because you're going to be going through a couple of layers of fabric. And if I didn't mention, you do need some type of glue. It doesn't have to be Weehaw, but Weehaw is excellent with a very tiny applicator because you're going to be using that to glue around a piece of velvet ribbon around the base of the crown here. So I'm going to go off, sew this lace in place. I'm glad that I caught that. And I will be back and show you the next step. So here's progress on our bonnet. We had sewn the header of the lace to the inside edge all the way around, and then we had turned it over, and we have very carefully slip stitched it to the outside of the bonnet, making sure that we don't have any stitches showing on the inside, and there's a lot of layers in here, so it makes it really easy to work with. And then we glued a piece of black velvet ribbon around, beginning in the center back and ending in the center back, and we let that dry. And then we turned up the back of the bonnet. So this is basically creating sort of, I think, what you would call sort of like it's not a bavalet, but that would have been a little ruffle or something, but just something really to fit around the neck, the back of the neck. And we've made a large rosette out of the velvet ribbon. And we've sewn 2 lengths of the black velvet ribbon to the points, the inside points of these, of the straight back. And then we created and sewed down 2 rosettes to cover those. So now we're going to be doing something which is always the fun part, and that's decorating. And they've provided you with these wonderful little blossoms. And these blossoms are dried blossoms. And what you're going to do is you're going to position these around the brim of the hat. They're going to fly all over the place. And I think I say in the directions, it's probably a good idea for you to clip these off and put them in a safe place, because they're going to want to fly all over. And you just, I'm going fairly quickly just to show you what this looks like. And, you might want to play with them a little bit. If you don't like a blossom, you can always, zhuzh it up a little bit. Again, I'm not going to go throughout the entire, around the entire brim, or rather crown. This is the crown. But I just want to show you sort of how you're going to start doing that. So you're going to have these very sort of charming, this little charming floral motif going around the edge of this. And I'm going to show you just a little bit more. And Weeaw's great, but you do have to wait. It's very good glue, but you do have to wait for it to set. So as you're doing this, use enough glue where it's really going to grab hold of that blossom, that dry blossom. You could even just like pick these off with your fingers. And just really, let it dry. I'm not going to be able to do all of this, but I just wanted to show you sort of what that crown decoration is. It is a lot of fun, actually. It's kind of soothing to do this. Listen to some music. I've been sort of hooked on this Puccini opera, Suor Angelica. If you guys haven't heard it, it's really, really beautiful and very moving. And that's what I do in the evenings as I'm doing my sewing. I'm listening to music, opera, or something else. But, you could do this watching the TV. You just want a good, strong light so you can see what you're doing. There we go. So see how charming that is? It's going to be very sort of like, I don't know, very country-like, but also very sophisticated. So once we've gone all the way around the crown, let me just gather these up here because they do tend to fly around. We're going to let this dry, and then we're going to do the same thing on the inside of the brim. So you're actually going to be, maybe I can just do one to show you. Let's see. Let's start maybe down here. You're going to do the same thing on the inside of the brim, but you want to do it in such a way where it's just on the inside of that lace heading. So you want to see that lace heading on all the sides. So you're going to do that all the way around. And then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to clip off, I think maybe like two blossoms maybe, or even 3. You're going to clip the stems off, and you're going to arrange them in the center here. And it's going to be this beautiful little surprise at the top of the bonnet. And that is the bonnet. And these bonnets, bonnet forms are so versatile and so easy to work with. If you haven't used them before, I recommend that you just get a few. They're not very expensive, and they come in all these fabrics that match using the same fabric as the other Carmel Doll Shop Boutique fabrics. So you can make a whole beautiful coordinated outfit for your dolls. And again, these, if you put some wire around this brim, it could hold a beautiful shape. Just want to make sure you're not getting anything on there. It can hold a beautiful shape, and you could really have a lot of fun with these. And just, I'm sure you've seen them in other kits. Use them for bébés or French fashion dolls. and really just have a lot of fun and let your imagination run a little wild, which is always the best part of a project. So I'm going to continue to glue these down, and I will look forward to seeing you in another video. And I hope you enjoy this project. It's really a fun one. Try to make it in different fabrics, because it really is a lot of fun. And the skirt is so beautiful and the shape is so beautiful. See, that's sort of coming together. So I will hopefully see you on another video, and hope all is well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.